No, no, I will call them up. I'll tell you. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for selecting our session out of a competition of 4 parallel synergy sessions. So we are here to discuss about the climate energy urban nexus, and our session is entitled Leveraging the Power of EO, of Earth Observation to Guide Climate Resilient Development in Cities. I will walk you through the plan for our session. Actually, we are having, after a brief introduction that I'm going to be delivering to you, 7 esteemed speakers from different perspectives, from the user needs perspectives and from the Earth observation data provision view angle. And then we are going to have a discussion about how we can really contribute to the GEO work program post-2025. So I'll briefly give you some context around our discussion. We know very well that it has been recognized, especially in the last IPCC, that climate change and cities are very well interlinked. We have heard of at least 3 keywords in this discussion: mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. And there are a lot of frames, policy frames at different scales that at the end of the day cities need to comply with. At the same time, we are having some evolution in GEO putting cities in the front of its engagement priorities, but also having some mandates with respect to delivering user-oriented services and also operational, ready-to-uptake services. And also you have heard in the previous plenary session that we are doing a restructure, a reformulation of a GEO work program in order to address all these changes that we need to bring in the program to address the challenges of the times. And in our case, we will be talking, especially tomorrow morning in the session, about a restructuring of the work program, but also the inclusion of some initial focus areas to help us prioritize the works and the synergies within GEO. So for today, the objectives of our session is to actually understand the real needs and the gaps of data and services that cities have. And this is going to be probably mostly the topic of the first panel of discussion and the speakers that we are having. Second, to show some very practical examples from the Earth observation community on how we can really deliver useful and tangible tools and services to those users. We have to discuss about how can Earth observation and GEO through its work program can really help align the different agendas and the different obligations that a city have in order to become resilient. And then also we are going to be introducing to you the next steps that GEO plans to make in order to facilitate and accelerate this process. So we would like to have all of you engaged and be active in the discussion, and there will be different means for this. The first one, the technological one, is that we are going to be using the Mentimeter. So please take some time to scan the QR and connect, and when it is time, you will be asked a specific contribution into that. And the other one is, as an audience, this is the human perspective. Please make sure that you engage, you make your questions, and you are engaged in a lively discussion with our panel. Can we go back to the previous slides, please? Okay, now I'm going to provide you some context with respect to the theme that we are going to be discussing. It's the climate, energy, urban nexus. As I told you, one of the transformations, one of the changes that we are introducing in the GEO work program is the initiation of some focus areas. Under focus areas, you can think of thematic umbrellas under which we will have the chance to discuss about the interconnected challenges in between the themes. For example, in our case, the climate, energy, and urbanization focus area describes the interconnected challenges of climate change with energy supply and consumption and urbanization through the lens of Earth observation. And these focus areas are not silos, are not limiting. Actually, there are interconnections within the focus areas, but this is the first initial attempt to have some prioritization of our collaboration within GEO. And GEO is strategically positioned, actually, to provide insights on both the climate change impacts on human settlements, on cities, for example, through extreme events that pose threats in the cities, but also the other way around, the impacts of human activities in cities and human settlements on climate change, for example, through emissions from different sectors, energy, industry, transportation, etc. And at the same time, we are observing the changing climate, and we are trying to estimate the exposure of citizens to the threats, vulnerability aspects, and at the end calculate the risks that accompany this in order to design and pursue actions for resilience. What does a climate resilient city look like? We know now, it is argued that something like 70% of the global greenhouse gas emissions comes from the cities. We know that, and a big part of it, almost half of it, comes from the buildings. So we know that we are far from net zero, but we also know where to target. And at the same time, we have the cities facing the threats, like, for example, heat waves, like floods, like fires lately. We have been talking about wildfires, forest fires, peri-urban fires. Now we are talking about urban fires. And Athens, unfortunately, in August, we had a fire that really entered the residential areas of the cities. But at the same time, even though cities are going to be expanding, we also have the technological solutions to cut up emissions up to 90%. So the hope is, again, in the cities. And what we have to keep in mind that is really acknowledged by IPCC, and it will devote a whole chapter on this, is that cities are different. There is a diversity. There is a diversity in regions, but also there is a diversity within the city. So we have to keep this in mind. And actually, GEO and Earth observation has a lot of tools already at the disposal of cities in different aspects: mitigation, monitoring of greenhouses, renewable energy assessment, etc., in adaptation, application of nature-based solutions and how we can mitigate greenhouse gases, coastal zone management, etc., but also resilience in preventive actions, in recovery actions, etc., etc. So we are there. We just have to make all these links and have the different users and data provision communities talk to each other. So with this brief, hopefully, introduction, we shall start the discussion. And for this, we are going to have three speakers, which I will call up to the panel, and they will be presenting from different perspectives. The first one is Denis Mwaniki from UN Habitat. He is a geospatial data expert, and he will provide us with policy context and the global view. The second is Bo San from representing C40 and being engaged in the climate action in China. And then we have Si-Yong Kyu from the World Resources Institute and in particular from the Sustainable Transition Center. In the meantime, I think we can show one of the questions that we are having in the Mentimeter. So this is feed for thought for all of you in the audience. So please connect, and the question that we are having is, what approaches are cities adopting to address the urban climate energy challenges, and what are the data-related needs that flow from these approaches? So take your time to think about this, fill in your keywords, 2 to 3 keywords would be adequate, and while we are going to have the presentation, then we will show the results and the discussion will follow accordingly. So I call on the floor Dennis for the first presentation.
Thanks a lot, Evangelos. Good evening. Ni hao. Good evening. When I don't see people smiling, I know I only have 5 minutes, but I prefer you smile and I talk to myself. Okay, nice. Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to say a few things about the international policy context for this new work program for GEO. And first also to congratulate GEO for actually creating a work program that focuses on cities and urban areas. I am from UN Habitat, and within the UN system, UN Habitat is responsible for sustainable urbanization issues. So this is a topic that is very dear to me and also to my organization. So a lot of the things I try to highlight here also connected to the work we do. Just by a show of hands, how many people are from cities in the room? People working in cities? People working in cities? Daniela, you are not working in cities. Neither is Niels. How many people are from city? Like you represent a city, 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. Okay, less than 5 people. How many people represent national governments? No? Okay. How many people are working in data from international research organization or academia or? Okay. That helps me to answer the question that I have in my third slide. But just want to start by giving a bit of context. That the new work program is very impactful because it actually cuts across different global frameworks. One thing I like to say, we are not short of global frameworks for cities, climate, energy discourse. We have already like the 4 main global frameworks, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai framework, the SDGs already have a lot of emphasis on the role of cities and the role of climate in shaping the future we want. And as Evangelist was saying that, of course, with majority of the populations in urban areas, we need to address issues in urban areas and climate change. If we don't address climate change issues in cities, then we also don't really get to achieve the Paris Agreement, for example, that asks us to maintain the temperature rise to below 2 degrees Celsius. The Sendai framework that creates strategies to reduce exposures and also vulnerabilities of populations to climate change. And the SDGs. The SDGs, I think, is the most common one. I once was in a conference and I asked people how many of the frameworks, the global frameworks they know, and people only knew about the SDGs. There's a lot of lack of knowledge on the existence of the other frameworks, which are very complementary. But I also want to say from the UN perspective, while we have so many frameworks, they're all connected. That you have a lot of the things in the Paris Agreement, the Sendai framework, also in the SDGs. And that's why, at least as you monitor one, you're actually monitoring quite a bit of this. And now we have the new entries called the biodiversity framework that aims to reduce the exposures and the loss of biodiversity. And the new urban agenda that seeks to create strategies to reduce or rather enhance and make cities more operational and respond to the needs of the different things on climate, but also on the increasing population. One thing I want to highlight about all these frameworks, there's the emphasis on cities and the role that they play in us really going forward. But there's also a very strong emphasis on capacity building local institutions to be able to understand what is needed and also act on this. And here is why I was asking how many representatives were from cities. First thing, from the GEO side, and thanks to GEO and the many work programs that GEO has, we have a lot of data. We have a lot of data on cities, we have a lot of data on urban areas. We have a very big problem in actually ensuring that this data gets used. And a good example of why I was asking who is here, we have so many data producers in a room where we are discussing cities urbanization, but we actually don't have people from the cities. I was in a conference last week and someone asked me, do cities know what they need in terms of the data they need? And the response from me was yes. In many cases, cities know what they need. Yet we have so much that we're already producing in our communities, but cities don't know what is existing. That is one. Two, the quality of what you are producing is very useful for different purposes, and we as researchers and data producers are not making clear what is useful for what. You have data that is very good for national level monitoring, you have data that is very good for sub-national monitoring, but data that is not very good for city level monitoring. So when you present some of the products we have to cities, then we're actually creating a bit of conflict to tell cities, you can use this, yet it is not very useful for their context. And this creates the continuous need to always keep updating the data and also make it higher resolution, but also the bigger problem of creating distrust in the data that we're producing. And the third thing here is we have a lot of players in the urban data production. And here, Martin, I call upon you. We have too many uncoordinated efforts that different institutions, different people working in urban data, yet we can really do much more by working together and cooperating to enhance the value of what we have. And lastly, we are not doing enough as a community to build capacities of cities to actually be able to relate with what we have, but also know how we're actually producing a lot of these products. This way, they can actually be able to enhance connectivity. I've seen a lot of cities in both developed and developing countries that are creating very high resolution data to track urbanization, to look at things like revenue collection, to look at things like how they are changing. But then you have a project supported by an institution, and it's a one-off project. Nothing happens after that, then there's no continuity of these processes. Yet a lot of the data that we have can actually help us to be able to support cities to do this and continue to produce data. So the call for me really is to do more in terms of coordination of the activities that we have. And I hope this work program will actually help us. And here just to say, we have two important upcoming reports, one on cities and climate change. One is a UN Habitat report on cities and climate change. Will be launched this November during the World Urban Forum in Cairo. And we've analyzed a lot of the current existing trends on cities and climate change there. But we also have the APCC report, or special report on cities, that will come up in 2027. And it would be nice to also have a look at that and also contribute to the discussion. There is currently a call to make contribution to that, and many other local level city reports that are also being published. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. Yep. Thank you very much for the perspective. So now I call up to the cities themselves, and Bosan is representing C40 for this region to give us his view on it.
Okay, thank you very much, and hello everyone. I'm Bosun from C40 Cities. Yes, and let me do a very quick introduction of C40 Cities. It's not very well known yet, but C40 City is a global city mayor network that focuses only on climate change. Globally, C40 has 96 cities, and in China, it represents 13 major cities. As you can see from the introduction, that most of the cities, the majority of C40 cities, are mega cities or metropolitans in the world. Because that one of our organization's aim was to use the leadership and the strong capacity of these world cities to demonstrate how cities can act in climate action responses, and to take their leadership in setting ambitious climate actions and climate goals, and to influence all the other cities around the world. In the past 5 years, C40s globally have launched a climate action planning process with all the our member cities, and we have set up a 2020 to 2050 climate action plans that aims all of these cities to achieve carbon neutrality as fast as they can, and to build up a resilient city for all its citizens. So data was very critical in this process. So during the implementation, that how data was used, how cities can get their data. One we can see is that C40 with WRI and the World Banks, we have developed a protocol, a methodology for the cities. That's a global protocol for community scaled greenhouse gas emission inventories that helps cities if they do not have any methodology or standards of calculating their own emission data. Then here is a protocol, here is a standard that you can apply to, and it listed all these scopes in a city that very city or micro level friendly that you can refer to. But most of, in the China context, most of our Chinese cities, they already have established their own protocol, their own practices of updating and their own city level inventory, greenhouse gas emission inventories. So they just follow the national or the provincial standards. So basing on these GHG data, that you can see that city can absolutely identify the highest or the most important emission sectors in their city, whether it is from transportation or it is from the industry, from the energy consumption or from other sources, that you can identify the key sectors in the city, and then you can develop the roadmap and the strategies for how you can take what kind of interventions from the city policies and incentive mechanisms for cities to do this, and to cut down the emission. And also very important during the process, the co-benefits of reducing emissions that you can lead to good air qualities. Equally important adaptation that we have heard a lot, that cities can gain their data from their national or local institutions, or some of the good practices now we can see is that they have started their own actions of downscaled or small-scaled community-based monitoring and data collection activities. Yes, and with this data, they can monitor the highest risk, climate-related risks in the city. But as we can see that for these big cities, that maybe they can have this sufficient data for them to develop a strategy or long-term scenario projecting. But if we look into some middle or small-scale cities, the data availability for them is very, very challenging. But climate risks for the city are the same. Yes, and last but not least, that C40 and other organizations, we are advocating and calling for cities to think about and to mainstream the integration of mitigation and adaptation in their climate actions as the cities, that we can see good practices, good examples of by doing a climate adaptation project or key mitigation infrastructures. You should consider its benefits or its potential to cut down emissions, and also to level up, upgrade the infrastructure's resilience standards, so it can stand for long-term climate risks that implied in the city's context. So thank you very much.
Well, last point, very important. Sometimes we neglect to understand that mitigation and adaptation go hand by hand, but we will discuss about this later. So our last speaker in this session, Si Young Ki, please, from World Resources Institute.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to be here to introduce some experience of data challenges and practices in city climate action. I'm Shi Yongqiu, Research Associate from World Resources Institute, China Sustainable Transition Center. First of all, a brief introduction of World Resources Institute. Our organization is an independent global think tank and do tank. Founded in 1982, we have nearly 1,900 staff around the world with offices in 12 countries and regions. Our network of staff work in more than 150 cities across 75 countries. Our mission is to move human society to live in ways that protect Earth's environment and its capacity to provide for the needs and aspirations of current and future generations. After President Xi announced the dual carbon goals for China 4 years ago, the various levels of Chinese government have shown great determinations to achieve carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. However, there are still some challenges in the governance, technology, and public engagement that require further research and innovation. Some of the challenges are strongly relied on data, such as lack of clear roadmaps, standards, and evidence-based solutions, and also lack of assessment mechanisms and qualitative KPIs for monitoring and evaluation, and consumer inertia. So we can see the importance of data here. It is relevant across all phases of climate action, especially for the understanding and planning phases, where the most well-intentioned cities are stuck. And it is also important for multiple entry points to climate action, such as mitigation, adaptation, energy access, air quality, equity, and jobs and economics. But it is also one of the biggest gaps for Chinese cities, especially for small and medium-sized cities with less capacity and fewer resources. Moreover, when data are available, they are often not fair, which means not findable, accessible, interoperable, or reusable for city climate action. In this case, we, WRI, work together with partners to develop CitySphere platform, a visualization platform trying to fill data gaps by making existing global and local data sets accessible and usable. It also monitors progress on low carbon development, analyzes climate action coverage, and distributes actionable information directly to decision makers and those who are advising them, reducing the barriers to successful urban climate policies. We welcome more partners to join us to improve and expand urban climate data and provide more tailored information to assist the city to improve decision making. Together, we can build more sustainable futures for our cities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your very interesting insights in our discussion. So we will have a very brief panel discussion round. Before this, may I ask that we close the Mentimeter, and the same question will be posed to you. You will have 1 to 2 minutes to have a first round, let's say, of reflections about your thoughts on the question. You can be inspired from some of the replies that we received from the audience. And may I start with the same order, Dennis, please?
Okay.
works? Okay. Yeah. No, from our experience, at least from UN Habitat, what I've seen, a lot of the needed responses. The first one includes nature-based solutions. It's something that we've actually promoted, but it's also something that cities are also naturally seeing as impactful. We've seen in many cities the need for nature-based solutions becoming more and more enhanced. And the simple act of, for example, planting trees or demolishing a road and putting like green infrastructure, there is having really a lot of impact in cities. Of course, we've also noted a lot of need for community engagement. A lot of actions in cities and what cities need sometimes, we promoted bottom up, top bottom, but there's also need for a lot of bottom up approaches, and we're seeing a lot of engagements with communities starting initiatives actually to create responsive strategies to respond to climate change and climate energy related challenges. Of course, there's a lot of work ongoing currently in a lot of cities on enhancing mobility. From reduce, especially with the target of enhancing non-motorized transport, that has both the impact of reducing impact, but also more functionality in the city.
Mm-hmm. I see, thank you. So it seems that we are discussing about the users and the data providers, whereas there is another community to be in the middle, communities, because if communities do not accept solutions and they don't feel the ownership of the solutions, probably we are failing. So we should keep this in mind. Bo, your reflection on the question and probably even more details if you have about the data needs that are related with these challenges, but please feel free.
Yes, thank you. Of course, that as I introduced, and I can see from the responses from the audience that all of these are relevant for cities, especially city leaders, to consider what is the best approaches, what is the most important areas that the city should focus on. But all these policies or these cities' actions should be evidence-based, and the evidence-based one key element of the evidence-based approaches should be data. But I can see that one of the key challenges is that the city lack the technical capacity to process this data, right? So even we provided with all these GHG emission data or the geographic and climate risks information to the mayor or to the leading departments of these of one city. To the city, actually, they lack of the certain technical capacities of translating this into actions, into policies. So this is quite different, especially the audience here mostly works with national level government or authorities. So I would say that one approach is what C40 also encourages city to engage with a wider and non-government group of stakeholders, of academia, of NGOs, of international organizations, of citizens, that they can together to provide solutions, a network of how to, by providing data and processing data, and to translate or deliver it into climate actions and policies. So I think that is one approach that's very important. Thank you.
Okay, we thank you very much. So we keep at least 2 points: the lack of technical capacity that you really highlighted, and the fact that we need ready to uptake solutions, not solutions that need all this expertise from the city, let's say, staff in order to produce what they really need at the end. Thank you. So, Si-Young, same question for you.
Yeah. So as actually the panelists and also audience has provided a lot, I would like to point one point, which will be integrated climate action, because currently when cities try to reduce carbon emissions, they often do it sector by sector. They try to reduce carbon emission from energy sector, building sector, and transportation sector. But cities are complex systems, and we need to consider an integrated approach to cover both mitigation and adaptation. And to address this approach, there are also some challenges related to data. First of all, what are the indicators to measure these integrated climate actions? Currently, we have some obvious KPI indicators for our carbon mitigation, such as like carbon emissions per capita, carbon emissions per unit of GDP, but there are some few indicators related to adaptation and also related to integrated climate action. In addition, cities currently, decision makers for cities, they also need some actionable insights for specific implementation, because some approaches are more generalized. Each city has their specific characteristics, and they need tailored, detailed, specific implementation approach for themselves. Sometimes we need to provide, as Bo mentioned, evidence-based solution for different cities, and maybe we also need a specified localized model which can calculate and provide such information. And let's see. Thanks.
Thank you, Chi Yong. So I keep the integrated approach really important. I think from the replies that we've got from you, we are converging with the conclusion of the previous plenary section about the need for co-design and co-development of solutions between all necessary stakeholders. And I will also keep the sustainable development. Actually, we are talking here about mitigation, about adaptation, about resilience, which is correct. However, it's the agenda of the problem. When talking about sustainable development, actually we are making a positive assessment. How can we develop in a sustained way so that we can also address the problems that we are discussing here. With this, I would like to thank our three panelists, which I will kindly ask to take their seats in order to see the next presentations, but you will be asked back when we converge as a whole panel. So thank you very much. So the next round comes to the EU community and the data providers, and we have selected different speakers to enlighten us in different aspects of the discussion we are having. So I will call them on the panel. First, Daniele Elrich from JRC, also deeply engaged in the Human Planet Initiative. Professor Ki-Hao Wang from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. He is the lead of the Global Urban Observatory Initiative from GEO. Then we have Niels Schuverans from VITO, also part of the Resilient Cities and Human Settlements working group, also providing some insights from the GEO work. And last but not least, Professor Chao Ren from University of Hong Kong, with specialty in heat stress, but not just this. So you will have 5 minutes from inspirational talks to the audience. We are trying to merge what we can provide to the cities compared to what we have heard for their needs. So please, Daniela, be the first one.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Daniele Ehrlich. I'm from the European Commission, and I'm representing here the Human Planet Initiative. The Human Planet Initiative produces global data sets. And we are, sorry, we are here. Yeah, so that's, sorry. And we are producing global data sets. And this is a sample of the products we are producing. So first of all, why global data sets? It's because we initiated it in order to be able to respond to disasters. So we wanted to know exactly if something happened. We wanted to know if there are population or settlements there that could be affected or damaged. So this was the initial part, but then we have started to use this data in a number of ways, and I'm going to tell you for this climate, energy, and urbanization session. So the first map is about settlements, so built-up areas across the globe. And we have processed an entire satellite image archives to produce those maps from 1975 to up to now. This is a key data sets because it allows us to really locate population on the ground. The second is the population density that we are deriving from by combining census data with built-up areas. And this is the big best seller because we are using this in a number of application areas. And I want to say that these two are co-designed with our users. We are part of our user community because our organization uses this data, and also co-developed. The last product is a product designed with policymakers, and it allows to partition the cities or outline cities and settlements across the globe. And it is used by international organizations to define urban and rural areas, and most importantly, also to locate about 11,000 cities in the globe. Yes, so time's running. So I wanted to show an animation of what is our urbanization product. This is the city of Hangzhou, looking from outside, and the animation shows the built up in 1975 and how it is grown over time up to 2020, and we are modeling up to 2030. So why I'm showing this is a local application of urbanization. And then on the left, we have a report which shows urbanization aggregated at national level, where we show the urbanization and how it impacts disaster risk for different countries of the world. This is just one example of how you go from local, and this is an animation, to national level data. For you to understand that the animation that we have for Hangzhou can be done for any city in the world and for any rural areas. So this is available within the Human and Planet Initiative. Then I would like to show you that how it is used within SDGs indicators. This is just one example, the SDG 11, the land use indicator, where we show that to compute this indicator, we need three ingredients. We need the change in built up over time, we need the change of population over time, and we need the outline of the cities. And the three products that I started talking about show all of this. So with our three data sets, you are able to calculate this land use indicator for all cities of the world. Of course, it's important to say that this is done with global data, and I'm sure many cities of the world will produce this with local data more precisely. But if you want to have it on a comparative level, you can have it. The characteristic of built up can help in mitigation because it helps to identify the urban climate zones. So the volume that we are able to estimate in some of our data provide also opportunities to better model climate within the city. And also the spatial arrangements of green areas, blue areas, built-up areas from our data can help in this process. Over time, can provide information about the building age. And finally, I wanted to show an example of emissions. Out of the 11,000 cities that we have identified, we cross them with emission databases for global emission database, so we can produce emissions information from 75 up to now, thank you, finished, 2025, for a number of emissions. Gas in this case is PM 2.5, but we have CO2 and so on. The final message is that we will have a new urban database that will be released in November this year at the World Urban Forum, that we will have hundreds of these variables available for all the cities of the world. Thank you for your attention.
So we thank you, Daniele, for your valuable insights and for proving that it's not just Earth observation data. We need a lot of more data in order to be able to interpret and calculate exposures and vulnerabilities and make it have a sense for the cities. So next is Professor Kihao Weng. He's going to provide more insights about mitigation aspects.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. What I'd like to talk a little bit is about our recent work on the urbanization, climate, and energy nexus. Okay. So first, I want to emphasize that this urbanization, climate, and energy nexus, this is one of the focus areas in NetGeo. This is very important. So we cannot separate each of these components together because urbanization not only introduce the rising the temperatures, but also this is associated with energy consumptions and emissions, all these together. When we want to link them together, I want to emphasize that geospatial technology, or more recently the geospatial AI, is the ideal tool to connect these three components. So when we're looking at the mitigations in the urban areas in terms of climate change, we want to looking at very different spatial scales. So one of the spatial scale, of course, is a building energy. Okay, so we want to look at these building energies. Two popular strategies come up. One is a green roof. One is a white roof or cool roof, reflective roof. But nowadays, actually, different kind of, the different kind of roof. But when we want to apply these two type of energy mitigation strategies, and the important thing is to consider local climate condition, but also considering the building parameters, for example, the building heights, the building volumes, the building ages, like Daniel just mentioned. And in addition to this, but also some other components that describe the local variation in the urban environment. So in terms of research you get, we're looking at these several areas. So one of the important areas is that in the past, the city government only look at the whole city level, maybe global level, regional levels. But the climate change mitigation actually need to go down to this in order to mitigate, to link to the community, link to the people living there. So we're looking at this as a neighborhood level or sub-city level. This is important. And another research you get, we already mentioned that in the urban environments, we're looking at the local variations, okay, different components, and in addition, future climate changes, different scenarios, of course, this is important. And finally, the model constraints or the modeling setups, this always is the issue. So when we apply the modeling tool. And so in addition to this, I want to bring out this again, okay, the geospatial and geo-AI technology for this nexus, okay, UCE nexus. And we know that for the next 10 years or something, the geo already made a strategy saying that, Earth intelligent for all, to emphasize that the geospatial intelligence or the AI, so this in the very important area of the Earth observation and application areas. But in our areas, just in case also some of you not working in these areas, but I know that a lot of people are working in this area because I see so many familiar faces, and I have so many friends here. Okay, so this, we say, okay, geospatial technology, we want to emphasize not only in GIS, but also the big data, okay, geospatial big data, remote sensing, but we also need to consider the Earth observation from the ground condition, in situ monitoring. For example, in this morning, we already have a lot of discussion on how to link the local in situ measurement to the global scale of observation. And finally, and the very hot topic of geospatial AIs. Okay. And so recently we conduct energy saving modeling by green roof and cool roof in the current and future condition for global cities. And so this, when we conduct this kind of research, is we considering several aspects. One of the aspects is how to integrate different models together and to consider local effects. Earlier I mentioned that local climate changes, variation in local areas. And we have Professor Lin Chao here, and she do a lot of local climate change research. And we also need to look at the local, the buildings and future predictions. Okay, so this is the area I studied, okay, like this. So in order to understand more about our outcome of these researches, I encourage you to look at my publication right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We keep very well that there are research gaps that we need to fill in, and I think this is a normal evolution that we keep on our research and then we turn the research into services and operational knowledge. Thank you very much. So our last speaker is Professor Chao Ren from University of, I'm sorry, you're right. 1, 2, 3. I'm in a hurry. No, I'm not. So it's Niels Soevereins from Vito. So we'll also hear the perspective from the private sector, actually. And it would be very interesting to see also in our discussion how private can work with academic organizations in a common endeavor. So Niels?
Thank you. Heat stress is one of the biggest climate risks in cities, with about 500,000 people who are dying each year of heat stress. And if we ask the Earth observation community how they measure heat stress in cities, and we usually end up with these kind of products, like Landsat thermal imagery, for example, has a long history since the 70s, for example. MODIS, who was the first one who gave like full scale for the globe imagery, consistent 10-day record. And then recently, there are like a lot of on-demand services, paid services usually, that offer a very high resolution image of the land surface temperature. But there is a problem when you use this for calculations of heat stress. And the main thing is, what we really want is a consistent high resolution heat stress product. And land surface temperatures are not heat stress. The main issue is that heat stress is calculated by using air temperatures and also takes into account humidity, and that is not measured by these satellites. So we also have problems with spatial and temporal restrictions. And if you want a very detailed view of your city, then you end up with paid products which are usually very expensive. Clouds also stay as a problem when measuring heat stress. So another option is to use a climate model, for example, to calculate heat stress. But climate models, they fix these issues because they give hourly outputs, for example, of heat stress. But it is computationally expensive when you want to go to these very high resolutions that cities require. So we had asked ourselves the question, what if we combine the advantages of the satellite images with the physics of climate models? And then we ended up with developing our URCLIM model. And our URCLIM model combines the climatological parameters from large-scale atmospheric models and the detailed imagery of satellites, and also derives products. For example, the global human settlement layer is one of the products that we use as input for our URCLIM model. When combining these, we can achieve what the satellite products cannot achieve. An hourly gridded 100-meter product that gives climate information for your city. Temperature, air, humidity, wind speed, all the things that you need to calculate heat stress in a fast and fluid manner. And then you can get these kind of nice assessments for cities. Here is an example for the city of Johannesburg, for example. This shows the areas where the biggest heat stress is present. What you immediately see is the red areas, they give the contours of the city, but you also see some hotspots that are popping up. And when we zoom in, for example, to one of these zones, you can see clearly why certain areas pop up as hotspots for heat stress. These areas are usually characterized by little vegetation and poor building conditions. And you see, this immediately showcases that greening and natural-based solutions lower the temperatures and heat stress in your city. The nice thing about the model that we use is that it can also be used for adaptation planning. This showcases an example for the city of Lisbon, where we did a co-design together with the stakeholders from the city and city governments to see, like, what if we change the city, try to make it greener, and see what the effect is on heat stress. So what you can see here on the left is the present land use. The middle is the new land use with a park system, so much more greening within the city. And on the right, you can see the difference in heat stress days that people experience in the city. And what you can see is that we see a decrease of almost 50% in heat stress days that can be achieved by nature-based solutions. And this is very useful as it gives this information to cities to really make a point of the benefits of these nature-based solutions. But you can also go a step further. We can also, for example, calculate the impacts. What is the impact towards the future if we don't do any action? How many deaths will we get extra? These are examples for 3 cities in India, for example, under different SSP scenarios. And also very important, when you want to sell your mitigation or adaptation potential, you're also interested in the benefit-cost ratio, and that is also things that can all be derived from our products. For example, this showcases that urban greening really has a positive benefit-cost ratio. And I end my presentation with giving 2 references. The first reference is a database of urban heat for 142 cities over the world. This is a nice dashboard that displays this information, and all the data behind it is freely available. And the second link is a link to our website, when you can find a lot of information on how we generate this and how this can be generated for a city of your choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. So very nice examples of how you can quantify some of the interventions that you are planning, and probably we should be discussing if this can be a selling point. So last speaker, Professor Chao Ren, as we said, she's going to address a little bit more engagement with communities, watching impacts on vulnerable people and how to deliver the decision support systems to decision makers. So, Professor Chao.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Also, thanks for Martin's invitation. Yeah, I would like to try to use Hong Kong's case. People understand the heat risk, especially in this kind of high-density cities context. I know some audience probably the first time come to Hong Kong, and for such kind of high-density cities, it's kind of a new journey or new place to all of you. So Hangzhou is one of the big cities in China. However, in China currently, for our urbanization, the urban population reached to 65% in 2022. And in the city where I live is Hong Kong, when we talk about the density, we use 2 indicators. One is building density. For example, in Hong Kong, the average building height is about 60 meters. And for our population density, the metro area, the average population density is around 6,000 people per square kilometer. And apart from that, actually, I think the Asian cities, European cities, we are experiencing this kind of aging society issues. For Hong Kong, by 2040, 1/3 population will be the aged city, will be aged population. Very often, if you read the climate change report or even the climate change projection for your own city, they will tell you under the different scenarios, this is the future. In Hong Kong, we project the extreme hot weather situations. We use 2 indicators. One is very hot nights, the other one is very hot days. And according to the different scenarios, you can see the numbers of the extreme situations increasing dramatically, while the cold days is decreasing. But as an end user, for example, you are the NGO people, you are the people from the planning department of Hong Kong government, if you have this kind of data, what is your action? So for us, the first step is to understand these kind of issues, especially how to detect the spatial pattern of heat hazard. And because we have two indicators in our extreme hot weather warning system, one is very hot day, the other one is hot night. So we map out this kind of accumulated hours of very hot day and hot night. Then we got the two maps of the heat hazard. You can clearly see that hotspot areas in daytime and nighttime are very different. And because of that, we also work with the public health researchers, try to understand what is corresponding heat health impact. And surprisingly, we found that in Hong Kong, actually, the hot nights will kill you instead of hot days. So if you have such kind of heat wave situation, i.e. we're talking about consecutive hot night and hot days, actually, you can see the mortality risk here. If you just only have very hot day situations, the mortality ratio is about the 3.9%. For very hot day, actually double this kind of mortality ratio. The number can reach to 6.7%. If you have a consecutive very hot day and hot night situation, the mortality ratio reached to 5.3%. So because of this result, we define the heat wave. I'm not sure whether people here are aware this kind of situation. We don't have a universal heat wave definition. So for your city, you have to use your own data, your health in terms of the climate data, in terms of the public health data, to define the heat wave for your city. So based on our study result, we define the prolonged heat for Hong Kong. And also based on that, we can identify the heat risk considering the population density, the exposure, and also vulnerability, i.e. the social demographic situations. We can identify the heat risk levels in Hong Kong. And once we map out this and overlay the community facilities, surprisingly found that in Hong Kong, the most dangerous in terms of heat risk area, the lack of support and facilities. And based on our result, in Hong Kong, they update this extreme hot weather warning. At the normal situation in terms of extreme hot, they will issue the extreme hot weather special tips. And under that, we have 3 levels: very hot situations, prolonged heat wave situations, extreme hot. For the extreme hot situation, it's tailor-made for outdoor labors. And based on our findings, we also work with Hong Kong Red Cross, and so they can identify the community where they need this kind of special support during the extreme heat. And also they can provide extra service during the prolonged the heat situations. Last but not least, I want to make a very quick summary here. I think for our research, it's very important to provide this kind of science in time and science in space to let end users to continue their work and support to our communities. So let's work together, make it real. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chow. So I leave the mic here. Good. So I thank all the panelists. You may remain, and may I kindly ask also our 3 previous speakers to come in the panel, and maybe we can reshuffle so that we do not create silos between the data providers and the users. Please, come and be seated. There is space for everybody. Now it's time to launch our second Mentimeter. I know it's getting late, but now we have to stay alert again. The next question that we have in the Mentimeter for you is: how can GEO best support the use of Earth observation for climate-resilient cities through its post-25 work program and international collaboration? So we would like you to think through different ways, examples, gaps and opportunities, user needs, demand-driven approaches, scaling up of services, strengthening partnerships, capacity building, funding and finance. Whatever you can come up with, please put it in the Mentimeter. It will be valuable information for us, but also can be also a driver for our discussion here. Okay. Now, while you are doing this, we will start the discussion with our speakers. And first of all, I will go a little bit out from the script, saying that you have heard some of the solutions that the EU providers have told us. Are you buying them? Are they close to what the cities need? So a very first quick reflection from our city people, please. There's a mic, so you can just get it. Maybe we can have a second one. Ah, you have it. Okay. So Dennis, you want to start?
Okay.
Very quick.
Yes. No, thanks a lot. The quick answer to you, Evangelos, is yes. A lot of the solutions that we have seen actually are part of what cities need. I just reflect on two maybe possible problems. One, the resolution at which what is available is provided could be either very good for the city or not usable for the city. If, for example, the amazing data sets that Daniele was showing, the intention is to look at the sub-city level, then it might not be as useful as if you're analyzing the city level. So that's one point that we have to look at. The solution is there, but is it like fit for the purpose that it needs to serve? So different solutions have different uses, and while the solution might be there, it might not always be the one that is needed for all the levels. The second challenge that I see in the presentation from both Niels and Prof, a lot of work is ongoing in the urban Eat Island, a very, very important data set, extremely important, but this information is not getting to the users. I would have asked maybe the city also representatives here, how much they know actually about existing data sets on urban heat islands. Not much. Even us who are actually using this information, we have so much coming up on a day-to-day basis, but it's not really being made available in an easy way for people to actually be able to use and also relate with it. So my point here just to say, yes, a lot of the things happening are really useful, but we need to find a way actually to making them available for the cities and the people who really need to use them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any other reflection or, yeah? No? So may I turn the floor back to the audience if we have some questions to raise? That would be nice to have this engagement. My friend. Lionel, oui. Can we have a mic to Lionel?
Thank you, Evangelos. Thanks to all the panelists. Very inspiring session. I'm Lionel Ménard from in Paris, PSL University, working in the energy domain. So I, let's say, slightly see energy reference as a basically announcement. We will have another session in the ODOC. I will present something which is focused on solar energy at urban level, high resolution cadastre. So this is basically a first announcement. So I was glad to see that, I think it was Dennis, and I remember your name from the Vito. You mentioned, so dialogues. So in your call, you mentioned, in your presentation, you mentioned dialogue about city representative and, let's say, operator of data. Let's say, put it that way. You mentioned co-design. I see co-design implementation there. I mentioned it as well in the previously, let's say, Mentimeter. So I think it is key. And I would like basically to reflect on work that has been done at European level, funded by the European Commission, where we have now available on the Geo-Knowledge Hub a fully framework regarding co-design and supported for EO data and EO practitioners. So it is available as an initial package release where we can do your self-assessment, co-design, let's say, product. And we are currently implementing this and upscaling this activity throughout the Destiny program, also funded by the European Commission, where we are dealing and talking with cities. And we have a use case with the city of Marseille in France, where basically we face this necessity of dialogue between practitioners into the city, basically who have some needs, and basically who need to have some, let's say, proper people, to talk to regarding the platform, and potentially intermediate people that know the platform as well, but are keen to listen to the needs of those city and those practitioners. So it's quite complex. It basically, I think, is key, because if not, things will not reconvene. You may end up with people who basically express needs, and we are not satisfied with the product, where people are designing product that not meet the need of those practitioners. So co-design is key. I'm very glad that this has been mentioned in this talk. Thanks to you.
Okay, thank you. And is there any other immediate question here from Orestes?
Hi, I'm Orestes Spire from the National Observatory of Athens. I saw a lot of hazard and exposure products, but not much on vulnerability. And I was wondering whether EO has a place for this, for vulnerability. And also, Xi Yong mentioned that there are not many adaptation indicators, which is indeed the issue. As we have another framework, the Global Goal on Adaptation, I'm sure Dennis knows this, and we are supposed to come up with adaptation indicators over the next 2 years, everybody in the globe, I mean. Is this the time and place for EO to jump in and not do it like the SDG indicators, meaning that, look, EO can support this and this and this, for example, green areas in cities. So put it in the list of indicators, and we are inside from the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Orestes. So reflections from the panel? You can start, yeah.
Okay. I will only respond maybe to the second part on the putting already EO in the indicators. The beauty, I think, is already there's a lot of global know-how of the value EO brings to actually tracking the global indicators. And even within the biodiversity framework, actually the co-indicator under target 12 is on the looking at the share of cities in green and blue spaces. And that can purely only be measured if we employ EO-related analytics. The second thing, and a big opportunity I see, we've had a lot of big transformation in the last 10 years with national data systems where you have EO becoming part of the mainstream actually of data production. Traditionally, it was only statistical systems that will produce data, and that would be qualified as official data. But now we have actually EO contributing to what is called official data. And for me, I see this as a really unique opportunity for this community to be able to even push further beyond what we really just saying as traditional built-up areas monitoring, but going into details of actually developing new indicators that are value adding. I like Neil's point about adding value from not just producing baseline data, but actually saying more. And from UN Habitat side, because we're interested in urban trends and looking at housing issues and climate, we are actually, for the indicators we are developing now, we are developing a monitoring framework for housing. We're actually putting EO and geospatial analysis at the core of this, and then we want to build everything on top of this. So I see opportunities really here. Mm-hmm.
Okay, please.
I want to address some of those discussions here. I think that these are several things we need to consider. Number one, what is the role of the geo in promoting use of these Earth observation data for climate resilient cities. So from my experience, because I have been enjoying the geo activity since 2012, has been very long. So I know the up and down of the geos, okay? So I think that we need to consider, if I'm the geo, the stakeholder, I would consider how long it need to take from vision to action, and why this takes so long. So of course, I think the geo leadership may already consider this. So there are several things I think we can do. Earlier session, I think this afternoon session, I think many of us already been there to talk about the geo post-2025 implementations. So one of the key questions is discussed about the fundings. I would say that the implementation of the geos, or to carry on the geo objective to implement this, much more than funding. We know that the geo, doesn't receive a lot of fundings, especially from the, private donations or something like this. But there's other things we can do. So one of the things we can do, okay, for example, we can utilize existing data set. We already have a lot of the data out there. So different kind of quality, we can harmonize these data sets through AI tools. So to link them together to become a useful data. So this is one of the things we can do. Secondly, we can, we need to look at the different user has a different needs. Okay, not every user need data. So you give them data, they already have a bunch of data. So for example, IEEE has data, ISPS has data, many other international organizations offer free data, USGS, they already have data. So we don't need that much data. Some people doesn't need this. So we need to have different kind of data services. For example, some need to have an app, okay, apps, okay, some need to have models, some need to have systems. So different kind of user has different needs. So I say that this may be another thing, okay, we can consider. Number three, how can geo best support these activities? I think about another way, okay, to think this. So today, of course, our symposium is a large crowd. So I keep thinking about this. Location perhaps is one of the factors. We can do much more than this. If we put these symposiums in another locations in China, we can receive a lot of registration fees, can attract a lot of people. And this may be one of the ways to, to get support. And so not to ask the governments, not to ask individual donors. So this is one thing. And in addition, we can work with other organizations. And I have my friend, Paula Gemba here. And he has been serving the ISPS Geoscience and Remote Sensing Society president in the past. So if we work with the IEEE or ISPS, organize the conference together, and we may also attract some more people there participate, so that we can get more fundings. Thank you.
We thank you, Kihao, for touching upon these very essential elements. Actually, we have been discussing about the need to have funds in order to promote our activities in the previous session, so these are very, very important elements. You want to complement?
Yeah, I want to share some information or experience from the World Meteorological Organization. I serve as an expert member of the Urban Climate Group because for the World Meteorological Organization, since 2007, they've moved their focus to cities and how to use those kind of data, observation data, like the weather records, GHG observation data, etc. They have the similar issues. So the first one actually, quite like the Professor Wong's suggestion, you need to understand the end user's need. How to do that? Actually, you need to build up this kind of partnership. For World Meteorological Organization, we encourage that each city, this kind of meteorological bureau, they need to step out. They need to identify who will be your potential end user to make this kind of partnership. Here we are talking about climate resilient cities. The potential user could be the policymakers, could be the NGOs, could be industry people, and could be the scholars, scientists like us. but also could be the citizens, right, the general public. So you need to step out to have this kind of partnership. And also, I think very important for the future, like the post-2025, it's not just only the geo, because all in all, we want to have a better future for all. Yeah, thank you.
We thank you very much. So this is very important. What we have mentioned, actually. It's important that we get the good lessons that we have from previous experience, and I think from what Martis is going to present later about a new service which is in collaboration with WMOL will really highlight probably why geo can be very useful in promoting these aspects. So do we have any other questions from the audience, please? Unless someone wanted to further.
Just wanted to
yes,
comment.
please, Daniel. Yes.
Working? Hello? Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to address the issue of vulnerability raised by the gentleman over there. Yeah, I think the measuring vulnerability is a tough thing, and it's the next frontier. I think we have somehow now exposure data. I'm talking now for global data sets. I think we have some of workable exposure data for any type of disaster, including heat waves and so on. But I think the vulnerability is the next frontier, and both I'm thinking about the physical vulnerability of buildings and the socio-economic vulnerability and the breakdown of demographics in age groups and sex and so on. That is something that we are working on, but it's a challenge. Thank you.
Okay, we think that was a response to Orestes. So probably we will have the last, let's say, frame question that I'm going to pose before I pass the floor to Martin. So Kihal brought a very important aspect, which is what is the role of geo? What can really geo do in this direction that we are discussing? I think we have already heard the first flavor of the new structure of geo, how we are thinking to move to this research to operation, to have conveners, to have accelerators and stuff. So I will give you 20 seconds each if you can really highlight which aspects of the new NBSH geo work program you think can really help in the direction we are discussing, which is integration, which is reduction of fragmentation, which is bringing together all relevant stakeholders and create this discussion that we need. So we can take this turn. If you feel uncomfortable in replying, don't have a problem, just pass the mic to your right. So Daniele. You passed the mic? Really? Yeah, you can start from there.
It's important that geo tries to really get a hold of like what is needed by the city. So really getting a hold of like what do they need and how can we provide like a globally available data set that covers the needs of the cities, that is flexible and available for all of them. Yeah. About 20 seconds, I guess.
Yeah. But where does this happen next? You can move.
Okay. I think that very important thing that earlier Jana mentioned this afternoon, mentioned that geo already been communicating, promoting activities, different kind of stories, products through social media. This is very important. In the next 10 years, I would say that to bring geo to become something like commercial brain, all this geo-associated things, okay, together. So in the future, when people see this geo-associated, immediately say, oh, this is very useful, okay? Very much like the product produced by IEEE.
Thank you.
Although I'm a scientist, actually I think we need to let this kind of geodata easily friendly to anyone, especially the general public. If they can use it, and if everyone can use the geodata to do something, that will be a win-win solution, right?
Excellent, thank you.
For me, I think there's too much duplication in geo work programs, one. And two, I feel geo has so much convening power that you can actually make so much impact trying to make people to complement each other as opposed to duplicating what different work program and people in the work programs are doing. And I feel like that is a real opportunity for Geo, being able to actually convene and ask people to actually complement each other and work together. If that is achieved, for me, I think Geo would actually have made a very significant impact.
Yeah.
The last thing is, as I said, there's a lot of data, but we also need someone to also keep assessing the quality of these products, because they keep getting released and they go out in the public and everyone tries to use them. And the results are very different. Last week, someone was showing comparison of different data sets and one indicator, and sometimes the variations are 80, 90%. So we really need also to have a role in that, at least that part of assessing the qualities of some of the data sets that are also being released.
Good, thank you.
I do have, I guess another important thing is to identify and specify the target users of different geo products, because as the professor mentioned, not all the users need data, but sometimes if we want to affect the policy making process, the decision makers may only need the final solutions. They only need the specific actions for them to take, or they only need the information where to invest or where they can do for next steps. So if the target aim of Geo is to changing the policy or affect some policy decision making process, they may need to specify the target products. Or if Geo want to affect policy planning process through research institutions or international think tanks, they may design another data sets.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. So let's try to keep the 20 seconds. Bo?
Sure. My recommendation would be that if cities' need or the consumers' need is very important for Geo's next steps, then I would say that Geo can develop communication or cooperation mechanism with certain cities, whether it's in different regions or it's targeted in different climate risks, that establish mechanisms during a program or project's designing period, and to hear the city's need on these topics. That would very much best design and to steer the development of certain projects. Thank you.
Thank you, very important and very practical.
Yeah, very briefly, I think after having attended a national workshop yesterday, I think we should communicate the best stories, the best products of Geo also to a general public in an easy way, and possibly even provide data sets in a simplified way to the general public and to students in university as a training material.
Thank you, Daniele. So I think we can close the discussion. I think all speakers deserve a very loud applause for being and staying awake with us. So please, thank you. And I propose that you can sit back to your seats so that we can pass the floor to Martin to lead us through the next steps for Geo.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you, Evangelos. Can everyone put their hands together, actually, for our fantastic moderator, who I know has had a fairly full schedule today with not very much sleep, so much appreciation, Evangelos. So I thought that last discussion, there were some very clear points made. I'm not going to attempt to kind of wrap everything up and summarize, but I do want to reflect on a comment that my agent provocateur over there, Dennis, made at the start of the talk, which was the show of hands for how many folks in the audience were representing cities or urban, and there weren't many. And I think that's to me that's my task now. Is next time we have this session in at least at the Global Forum in May, and if not the symposium a year forward, that I want to have a much better show of hands when we ask for the urban representatives in the room. I mean, urban resilience is in a way, it's the newest engagement priority. It's not brand new. It's been around for a couple of years now within the community. And certainly if you look at Geo's current work program, there are a number of initiatives that look at the urban scale, like the Human Planet Initiative, Professor Weng's Global Urban Observatory Initiative. So it's not that we haven't been doing anything at the urban scale. But when I joined GEO last January, so 18 months ago, the kind of challenge for me was to kind of build a community around this theme of urban resilience. And what that meant to me was to get organizations, individuals representing cities at the table, at the working group meetings, discussing some of these issues. So that journey has begun. I think you've seen a selection of speakers today that we hope to see in the soon-to-be formed, or the very recently formed, I should say, Resilient Cities and Human Settlements Working Group. I know there's also some of you in the room here who represent that group. The other thing I think we've been maybe not mischaracterizing, but characterizing in a very simple way is this idea that we have both the supply of the Earth observations data from our research, scientific, academic community, and the demand from users. I think what the discussion today brought to light to me, at least, is that we're not talking about cities, urban users as a homogeneous group with one specific need. Like, there's a very diverse, cities are very diverse environments, very complex environments. They're governed in quite complex ways, and as Evangelos said, both between national territories and within, the ways that cities are managed and governed quite different. So there's a whole wide range of user needs that the Earth observation community needs to respond to. And I think there's a real need then for our, and I'll flick my slides forward, for the Resilient Cities and Human Settlements Working Group to bring some of these voices to the table. And that doesn't just mean the practitioners, as we've heard mentioned, the city planners, the policymakers at city levels, but I think it also means a much broader kind of partnership, if you like, or coalition of individuals, including actually and there's a slight tension here, but we've mentioned the need for funding of these initiatives. And if you talk to any city about climate change, pretty much if you say, what's your biggest constraint, they'll say it's funding. I haven't got enough money. I've got a very constrained municipal budget. I've got enough to pick up the waste, or I've got enough to fill potholes in the street. Now you're asking me to pay for adaptive infrastructure or resilient infrastructure, or think about sort of net zero, low carbon initiatives. So there's this funding gap, financing gap, really. So I think the broader question of how do we fund some of the activities in the GEO work program probably starts with involving the funders, sources of some of this finance within bodies like the working group, so we can actually understand together how we can build projects, initiatives that bring together practitioners, the scientists, policymakers, and potentially also the sources of finance to try and close that kind of city climate finance gap. So next steps, really, as I say, this working group is common to GEO's approach across a range of thematics: climate change, disaster risk reduction, data and capacity development. We have these working groups which meet 3 or 4 times a year. The idea being that we bring all of these various stakeholders together to talk about challenges like climate resilient development, and really sort of understand what contribution we can all make, whether that's through co-design of new Earth observation data tools and services, appearing at international events like this one to make sure that the message is being heard in the right ears, contributing to reports like the IPCC's special issue on cities, which we hope to at least put forward we have put forward some reviewers and potential contributing authors to that, so that we can get the language we need to reflect on some of the solutions we have in some of these key texts. One of the first things that the group will do is we have, many of you will know, and many of you may well be going, the World Urban Forum 12, which is in Cairo in November. Gio, myself, Evangelos, and a handful of others will have a session there very much along the lines of the topic we've been discussing today. So absolutely, I hope in that audience there will be lots of people putting their hand up saying we're representing cities, we're city mayor. And we'll have colleagues from C40 at that event as well. So that's one of the first things that we'll be doing before the end of the year. The other thing I will just mention quickly, and we've heard a lot about heat today, it was partly by design that we sort of introduced the topic of heat, because one of the initiatives that we hoping to see in the future GEO work program, the post-2025 work program, is something called the Global Heat Resilience Service, which is a concept, or it was a concept when I joined 18 months ago. And over the last year and a half, we've been shaping this concept, which is really designed to address this critical gap when it comes to information, insight for cities to understand the health and other related risks from extreme heat or from exposure to extreme heat. This was born partly out of some of the existing work program activities in GEO's work program, that initiatives like Human Planet, which touch on where risk is perhaps concentrated or exposure is concentrated. Some of our initiatives from the EO for Health activity, which has a special working group on heat health. And we recognized that it was a real contribution that GEO could make to kind of solving this challenge of helping cities understand the scale and nature of these risks, first and foremost, but crucially, what to do about it. What kind of adaptation options do we have? And trying to provide that very sort of local understanding of risk through data, through maps, through very clear insights. This isn't an idea we've been cooking up in Geneva. Well, it is an idea we've been cooking up in Geneva, but we've been cooking it up with the participation of cities. And we had a very successful workshop in February this year, where we had around 15 representatives from cities, urban planners, climate change officers, chief heat officers in some cases. Again, I know some of you were at that workshop. And really what it was a chance to do was hear from cities to tell us how are they currently thinking about heat risks, how are they currently thinking about trying to manage heat risks, and where are the gaps, and what, if we were to design a service, and effectively we gave them 2 days, some blank sheets of paper, and asked them to tell us and work with some of the Earth observation community we had in the room and policymakers from the UN family of agencies. What is it that, if you had a blank sheet of paper, what can we design together? And that really helped to shape this concept for a heat resilience service. And one of the things that we would like the Resilient Cities and Human Settlements Working Group to do going forward is shape this project idea further. We're sort of in a process of shaping it for the new work program, raising funding to try and get it off the ground. And I think a very valuable contribution that the working group can make is to look at this potentially future flagship for GEO, which cuts across a range of SDGs, responds to all of these big policy frameworks, and is designed to address what we've seen over the last few summers to be a very clear and present danger. If you like the sound of that, please follow the QR code and get in touch, and we can give you a bit more information. But I'll just close by saying thank you very much for coming. I'm very pleased with the number of people in the room. I think we've done our job, Evangelos, and I don't want to stand in the way between you and a visit to Westlake now to go and see a performance. And I think the buses are leaving from here at 6:15. I'm looking for Hannah. That sounds right, doesn't it, Hannah? And maybe we can put the slide up which gives the instructions, because off the top of my head, I'm not very clear. Anyway, thanks again to Evangelos, the panelists. Thanks to the audience. You've been amazing. Round of applause for the audience as well. And there's the instructions, and that closes the end of the first day at Symposium. Thanks, everyone.